Welcome to Aesthetics Unmasked. My name is Laura, and I'm joined today by my amazing co-host, Jane.
Guys.
This is our first podcast, so you have to forgive us. We are just working through kinks, and of course, my messy desk is right here, and so just enjoy. We wanted to create a podcast for you guys so that we can give you all of our esthetician brain power, and hopefully it helps you on your journey in whatever you're doing. We don't know what you're doing, whatever you're doing. So just to introduce you guys, Jane, do you want to say a little bit about yourself and your experience and what brought you to this point?
Sure. I have been licensed 10 years. Actually, I think this month. This is your fault. So little known fact, Laura is the reason why I went to aesthetic school and got licensed in the first place. But I was licensed for 8 years in Florida, and now I've been licensed in Texas for 2 years, and I still maintain my Florida license. So we've been doing this for a minute.
Yeah. Was it hard to get your license in Texas?
No, I was very lucky. So I'm sure every state is different, but I think I sort of got grandfathered in because Texas is 750 hours and Florida is what right now? 250?
220. It just went down.
220?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it was 260 maybe when I went to school. So they took my hours from my Florida license plus my experience. I sent in my resume and all my continuing ed, and they took it. And so I was very fortunate that I did not have to go back to school and redo school altogether, because I know that's the case in some states. So yeah, it was very easy for me.
Yeah. And honestly, like our theme today, everybody, is education. And we want to talk to you about, like, if you want a license, what to look for. We'll give you some advice. We have our own experiences to pull from. But I'm half tempted to just spend the time and find out what every state requires, because it's always a question. And if you're in a state that requires more hours and you're thinking about moving to Florida, you got to find some stuff out. And even I would just get a license in that state that has more hours, because it's most likely going to be easier to transfer over instead of having to go back to school, which a lot of people, that's the case, especially if you're right.
I think Florida might be the lowest, right? I think
Pennsylvania's pretty close. I think they're 300 hours, but Florida might be the lowest.
And I feel like I've heard, and again, I haven't confirmed with research, but I want to say there's even one state that doesn't even require a license. Because I don't know why they haven't made it a nationwide standard. We could do a whole podcast on that, but the differing hours is crazy to me.
Yeah, and it's very confusing because people come in for tours and stuff and they just don't know what the best thing is to do and how to move and it is confusing. Well, I'm really, really glad that you guys joined us. In case, for those of you who don't know my story, I've been an esthetician for, I can't do the math, since 2008, like a bajillion years, it feels like.
Oh my gosh.
It's not weird. So in the process of being an esthetician and doing my thing, at some point I decided to open a school. I don't know why. And here we are. So
because I told you to.
I had many hours crying in the office about what to do with my life, and Jane's like, "You need to open a school." So here we are. It's all your fault, Jane. But yeah, so we're hopefully going to be able to give you our experience and our information that can hopefully help you on your journey, whether you're already an existing esthetician or you are just getting your license or you're just thinking about getting your license. We're here to help along the way. So today's theme and today's episode is all about getting your license and what you need to do and some advice from us in that instance. So welcome to Aesthetics Unmasked and our first episode on getting your skincare license. Yay! So many people want to get a license and like life gets in the way, and then they don't do it for the longest time. I think you were in the industry for a really long time before you got your license, right?
Yeah, well, I kind of came to this a little bit, I mean, not super late, but I was 27 going on 28 when I decided to go back to school. And as you know, I went to college, I did the college thing. And we're kind of the generation where our parents told us, like, don't go into cosmetology, don't go into that. You have to go to college or you're going to, live under a bridge. And I think that now, you know, the students are really lucky because I think they're seeing through social media that you can actually make a career out of this. I think it's become really popular where it was even just 10 years ago, this was not a super popular career choice. And I'm sure even more so back when you got licensed, but I had people try to talk me out of it.
Yeah.
Friends, family were like, why would you go do that? You're going to starve. And it was my mom that encouraged me. It was you that encouraged me. Um, and I know my story is a little different because of the type of schooling that I got. I wouldn't necessarily recommend my path for everyone, but because I was so well versed in the industry, I went sort of the fastest, cheapest route and just get in and get out and get that piece of paper, which is not what I would recommend for most.
Yeah, but you have been
But
in the industry for so long that that worked for you.
right. And, I think I had been bugging you for about a year before I got licensed when you finally were like, Jane, just school for this. You obviously love it. And then getting to watch you be an educator, because you were an educator for what, 3 years?
Yeah, I started with Eminence. I was training for them for about a year and a half, and then I went into the academy in Fort Myers, and then yeah, for about 3 years, 3.5 years. So
Yeah. So basically, whatever you told me to do is what. Just do whatever Laura tells you to do is the moral of the
moral of
story.
the story. Yeah,
But
it does help. Like I get it a lot, and now that now that I'm owning a school and I talk to people who want a license, I find that there are people that really are very interested in the quality and they want to make sure they have things that they want to check off a list that they're going to get to learn. And then there are people that call me and they're like, I own a spa. I'm just not an esthetician. I can't hire anybody that's good enough. And I'm just going to get a license. I've been trained on hydrofacial. I've been trained on these product lines. Like, I just need a piece of paper. Can I just buy one? And those are the people that I tell to go get the experience that you had. That was really just, I'm going to go through the motions and do my requirements and then get my license because I know I'm going to thrive anyway. It's the people
right.
I worry about that really want a good education and then they go to the schools that are like just wham bam, thank you ma'am, give you a license, get you in and out. I worry about them because I feel like they have high expectations and then they're discouraged. But for people who really I just need a piece of paper to say I can do what I've already been doing and I already know about, then that's where those schools kind of come in. So there's a place for them for sure.
Well, and
Uh,
I think with our experience, I mean, you've worked at sort of the big corporate big box school. And then that's where I currently substitute teach sometimes is at one of those big corporate box schools. And I know your school is a little bit more of a boutique style school. And um, the complaints are always the same though. And that's, I think, and I'm in Texas now. So it's not just Florida. It's now, I'm seeing the same complaints in Texas with the quality of education, the price of education, the competency of the instructors. So there's a lot of things to think about when choosing a school.
oh yeah, for sure. When it comes to looking for a school, I can't even stress it enough. Like you have to go to the school and you have to take it to work. And we get calls all the time, and there's people who's just like, how much is it? How much is it? How much is it? And that's great. And of course, money is a factor. There's very few people I see that are just like, take my money. Like everyone's concerned about money, but does your concern for money outweigh your concern for your level of education? I don't know because you don't want to, even if something is $3,000, it's still $3,000. It's still a lot of money.
Yeah,
You want to make
absolutely.
sure you're investing in that wisely. And if you're in a good school, they will find a way to finance you. So don't worry about the money part. Even us, like we're a private boutique school. We're not a Title IV school that works with the federal government to get people financed. But instead, we work out payment plans and we'll enroll you for next year if it means that you can make small payments. And then by the time you're done with school, you're done. You don't owe anybody anything. You're not starting in an industry in hawk, $12,000,
Right.
$10,000. So, my advice to new students or new, prospective students that want to get a skincare license is don't worry about the price of it. Worry about the actual program that you're getting and what you're paying for, and the school will find a way to get you financed.
So what sort of questions, if someone was going to come and tour, a school or I remember I toured, you're in Southwest Florida, which is where I'm from as well. I moved to Texas 2 years ago, the DFW area. But I remember I toured, I think, every school from Tampa to Naples, and then even started looking at the East Coast and Miami and Fort Lauderdale, because I wanted to make sure that I exhausted all of my options. So if someone was, in an area, what should they be looking for? What are the kind of top
That's a
tips for kind of sniffing out which is a good school and which is a bad school? What would you recommend?
Yeah, that's an awesome question because there's a lot to that. Obviously, the first thing that you have to figure out is what is more important to you. The finances, the schedule, the quality of the education. Sometimes location is a really big factor for people. So depending on those things, obviously you're going to want to call around. You're going to want to go for visits. And when you call places, most of them are not going to tell you the price. They're going to tell you to come in for a tour because they want to sell you the
Right.
program. It's really hard to figure out the quality of something with just a dollar sign on it. If someone says, oh yeah, it's $12,000, come on in. I'm going to be like, no, I don't have that kind of money, but I go there and it's brand new and you're going to learn all these cool things. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to find the money. So, that is something that you just want to go do, take the tour, and then figure out what's most important to you. If hours or something, because you work during the day and you can only get there at 6 o'clock at night, that's going to weed out a lot of the prospects for you on the school front. But generally when you tour, the school should give you, it's not a catalog, it should almost be like a highlight of what you're going to learn. And that should be very transparent. And I find that some schools are not, where they'll hand it to you to look at and then they take it back. They don't want you to take that with you. So you want to be able to compare notes. You want to be able to know, okay, well, school A is going to teach me X, Y, and Z. School B, I really like the atmosphere, but they're not going to teach this, but they are going to teach that. And then you can kind of discern from that piece of paper, hopefully all the cool things that you're going to get to learn. And that really should be something that you figure out in looking for schools, what you're paying for, essentially.
Sure.
The other part too is when it comes to school shopping, you have to like your atmosphere. So, taking the tours is going to be part of that. You have to love what you're going to learn, obviously.
And like looking for like what your priorities are. So like figuring out whether, if you're working full time, then you obviously are going to need a night and weekends program. If you're,
right.
If you can work part-time and work nights and go to school during the day, I mean, there's a lot of factors that are,
Yeah. And if
going to matter.
For sure. And if those things are like, it works, whatever, I just want to like the school, everything else I'll fall into place. The one thing I would ask, and my brain came back, thank you. You like push started it. I'm like an old VW that's just going to and it might make it to a light and then just totally stop working. But so this is how most schools operate. And a lot of people don't know this. So I'm going to share it with you. And I don't know when you went to school, Jane, if this was your experience, but this was mine. So in the school that I went to, there was a teacher and she taught chapters 1 through 10. And then there was a night class instructor that taught 10 through 1. And what happens is the teacher is on a wheel. She's just going, or he, 1 through 10, 1 through 10, 1 through 10. And every time there's a new class start, they go, and they drop you into an existing class. So you start, there's probably 10, 15, 20 other students in class. You don't know anybody. Maybe there's 2 or 3 other students that started with you, and you go plop in wherever the existing class is. Now, some schools have it framed out so that, every new class start is on week 4 or week 7, and they do that for a reason. And some just throw you in. So if you are someone who could just pick up where they're at, and you don't worry about that kind of stuff, then that works really wonderful for you. Like my first day of school we were going through chemistry. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? This is so hard. And my first facial I ever did on somebody was a chemical peel instead of doing a facial. And in those instances, there's one instructor to about, 15, 20, 25, 30 students, which doesn't matter how wonderful of an instructor they are, it's going to be really hard for them to get around to you. So the senior students end up teaching the junior students. And this is what we call an academic wheel. Yeah. So you learn a watered down version of what the teacher taught. Maybe if that student hadn't gotten taught by another student who got taught by another student. And so most schools operate that way because they have figured out I can have one teacher and then I could just toss new students in all the time, whenever we want, whenever there's a class start, and then they'll just pick up wherever the class is. It works from a school perspective. It does not work from a student's perspective.
I was just gonna say there's got to be so many gaps and holes
Mm-hmm.
in the education then, because if things are not getting covered,
Yeah.
who's gonna fill? And then, God forbid a student misses, a couple of days because they're sick or something, and then they never get caught up. They never learn
Right.
waxing, or they know, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I know when I substitute teach at a local school, the girls there, and I mean, this is a particular school and a particular place that has issues. And I'm sure plenty of schools are amazing and plenty of schools have issues. But I always hear, as the classes rotate out and girls graduate and new girls come in, I keep hearing the same complaints over and over again.
I feel schools too, a big part of when I first started, originally Spa Professionals Academy, now Skincare Academy of Florida. I was just going to do continuing education. I was not going to do a facial school. We've talked at length about this, and becoming a school is a very long, arduous process. So I wasn't going to do that. But in the process of about a year of teaching continuing education, I just kept hearing all these horror stories about people who went through school and how they felt when they left school. They weren't prepared. They paid a big price tag to only be told that it was just the minimum requirements for the state and they should just take it and like it and be happy with it because they're just going to learn when they get in the industry. And that's ultimately what pushed me to open the school, that and you. Uh, so here we are, but I do find most people leaving school don't feel prepared, and you could have gone to the best school in the world. You're probably still not going to feel prepared, as prepared as you want to be. So really finding and taking the time to find the really good schools and listen and like read reviews and talk to other estheticians that have gotten licenses and what they would recommend. They're going to be probably the best source of information for you. But it is really important that you feel confident, at least in your education. You might not feel confident in your stuff, confident in your education, that you know what, you're going to get there and you're going to figure it out when you get there.
I have a question for you in your school in particular. If a student or potential prospective student came in and got a tour from you, was like, hey, I'm still on the fence, can I come in and just like do a sit-in for the day? Would you allow something like that?
Oh yeah, we encourage it, and we call it like a class audit. And they can,
Okay.
and we'll usually ask them, do you want to come in for a theory and see what a day in theory is like, or you want to come in for the hands-on? Most of the time they want to come in for the hands-on portion, which I don't blame them. And they can sit in with us as long as they want. They could participate if they want, or they could just kind of sit back. We encourage them to talk to our students. At other schools that I've been at, they've discouraged them talking to other students. Like, don't let them.
Well, that's what I was gonna say is, the school that I sub at, again, it's a decent school, but it's very corporate, very cold. I joke that it looks like a prison, like you're going to aesthetic school in a prison.
Yeah.
It's very gray and fluorescent lights. And if anybody that, decides to listen to this needs to go to Laura School's Instagram, if I could go back and do my license, I would go to the school because it's warm and friendly and fun. And, it's everything you could ever want. But that would be my recommendation. If someone came to me and said, I'm thinking about going to school, I would say not only tour all of them, but just go shadow for a day and get a feel. Like, are all the girls sitting around miserable playing on their phone? Are they engaged? Ask them questions? Like, because what happens is I hear so many of these young ladies saying, okay, I just spent, thousands upon thousands of dollars for this. And if I would have known what I know now that they're enrolled, they wouldn't have gone there. And it's like, you do not want to regret choosing a school, especially when you're spending just as much as college, if not more. And so I would highly recommend people go shadow for a day and get a feel.
And we used to, I keep forgetting to do it, but for the first like 6 or 9 months, we would give them a free facial to come in and like talk to a student, come get a free facial.
That's a great idea.
So even if their school isn't offering it, maybe book an appointment, get a facial, talk to the student that you're working on. I mean, there's no perfect school. Let's take that off the table. There's not going to be a perfect school.
Absolutely.
But every student's experience is different. And so, as private as we are and as small as we are, and we try to keep things fun and interactive, and we give and give and give to our students, there might still be a student that is like, it's just the personality of the student that doesn't understand what they have in front of them at the time. So it wouldn't go by one student's perspective, but definitely multiple students, definitely talking to or reading reviews of things. I mean, it's all about homework, right? And it's not today's day and age. We want to just like look something up. I am guilty of this, and I want to push a button. I want to get the exact answer I'm looking for.
Give me everything.
I don't want to do any extra work, and this is not one of those things that you can do that for. You have to do the work. Otherwise you never get this time back. You never get to go back to school and do it again. If you can, you're going to pay a lot of money for it. And at that point, it's not worth it. You have a license, go get a really good job and learn on the job. But it really is something that I tell my students, be selfish about. Like, make this a selfish choice, that this is your choice. You want to do it. You're going to eat up all the knowledge. You're going to take full advantage of everything you possibly can, everything that the school has to offer. Because it's a lot of money and it's your time. We don't take a single second or a single dollar for granted. If our students are going to spend 20 hours a week with us and pay us all the money to be here, we're showing up and giving 150%. Our building is going to give you 150%. Everything you're going to learn is going to be here for you. It's adult education. At that point, it's up for you to grab it and,
they're grown-ups. They're not kids. Yeah. Well, jumping off of that, do you feel like, I know that I think most students would do this if they can. Again, budget and schedule and lifestyle are going to come into play here. But do you recommend that if someone's in school for aesthetics or massage or whatever it may be, that they try to work in the industry, before or along with going to school? Like, the quicker that they can get their feet wet, the better.
Yeah, that would be great. And honestly, I actually give my students the example of you all the time, because let me tell you about something about this beautiful woman right here. A lot of students will get a job, an entry-level job as a front desk person. And I remember the phone call, that you were like really upset. You're like, I just went to aesthetic school. I don't know if I want to be front desk again. It's not what I went to school for. And I encourage you to stay. And like I encourage my students, just stick it out. People get pregnant, people have kids, people move, people, I don't know, drown in a lake. I don't know. People move, people go stay. And when that happens, and you're the trained esthetician that has learned every single thing possible, and you just happen to be at the front desk, guess who gets a full book of clients, and guess who gets to slip right into that role is you, right? So I don't think you were at your employer very long before you ended up taking over.
No, I mean, we should probably do like a back it up and tell people our history a little bit so they have some, but so I went back to school for this at 27. I had worked at hair salons and I loved it, but I always knew hair wasn't for me. And so I bugged this beautiful lady for like a year. I could not get enough knowledge about skincare products. I was obsessed with this industry. Like I always say, I should have known when I was younger, because I took my first credit card out at Dillard's to buy an Estee Lauder serum that I had no business using. I was 18 years old. I mean, I was like a fetus, but I decided like I needed a $200 skincare serum. But I'd worked at hair salons, and then I got a job at a day spa as a receptionist. And my personal opinion is that every single beauty industry professional should have to be a receptionist for like 6 months minimum, because you are going to get ripped to shreds. You are going to know what it's like to have, to learn customer service skills and time management.
Dealing with.
Just learning some back office stuff, I think, is really important. You're going to also answer a lot of good questions, but you're going to answer a lot of stupid questions. And so it's going to make you grow patience and empathy. So anyway, I did a lot of, was a receptionist at a day spa while I was in school. And then I was a client at a local med spa. And when I got out of school, they hired me as their receptionist. So I did that for 6 months. And then their esthetician at the time got into a spat with the owner, and walked out that day. And they took me and said, Jane, you're off the desk. You are our new reception, or you are our new esthetician. And, peed my pants and was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But at that time, I really had already been there for 6 months. And so I knew the answers to all the questions and I was comfortable with the staff. And so I tell all the students at the school that I sub at and teach at, I'm like, if you can get a job now, don't think of it as your end point, your end game. Just soak in as much as you can. And even if the place beats you up a little bit, take all that knowledge. And then sometimes not knowing what you want, or like knowing what you don't want, knowing what you don't want is just as important as knowing what you want. Okay. So going down a path and going like, this is not for me, is just as important as finding like the right path. Okay. Especially when you're younger and you're a little baby esthetician and I'm sure this happens to you, right, Laura? All the little baby esties are like, I want to do lashes and I want to do plasma and they want to do everything and get certified in everything. And then once you've gotten your feet wet, you're like, yeah, no, I don't want to do Brazilians and I don't want to do lashes and my back hurts and people are crazy. And so I think sometimes getting your feet wet, either in school or taking that reception job and trying to absorb as much as possible in the beginning, then you don't waste all that time in the middle of your career, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And had you not done that, and even for myself too, had I not just taken a little leap of faith in my career and maybe not known exactly what I wanted to do, but I took the job anyway, I wouldn't be where I am now, for sure. I would definitely not. Yeah, it's cool to see, like, flash forward, like if you guys are looking for a school and it seems like everything is so far away, this happens in like a blink of an eye. Like, I can't believe you've been licensed for 10 years already. It's just crazy. The time is flying so fast. But
how many times did I call you and be like, what do I do about this? What do I do about this? Like, Laura we've been friends since what, 2011?
I was 26. Yeah.
I moved back to like Estero in 2011.
Yeah.
So we've been friends for a while, guys. Yeah. She's literally, I kid you not, the reason why I went to aesthetic school. So she has been my friend, my mentor, my educator, my esthetician, and she's been my boss. So I don't think anybody knows that. Obviously, if they don't know us personally, they don't know that you were my boss for 2 years.
Yeah, that was funny. I'd come in and I'm Jane's like,
we shared an office, guys, and we didn't kill each other.
Those tiny, it was like a
box.
They just shoved us in it, like, just go do work.
We made it though, through COVID, through me having a baby.
Yeah, it was hard to run a wellness center during a global pandemic like that. I feel like it doesn't get worse than that.
I feel like in editing, you need to do this is how many jobs, like on one column, like all the jobs that you've had, and then all the jobs that I've had, and be like, this is proof that we know what we're talking about. Like, we're bulletproof at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to be able to give back and give information to people as they need it. I do hear, and like, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier with picking your education, I do hear a lot of people, and I wanted to ask you about this because I know your experience, and obviously my experience was pretty okay, but I just had to pick up and run. But when they're in school and they don't like their education and they're past the point when they can withdraw, and just so you know, if you are in school, you have up until 40% of the completion of your program to withdraw from the program. I
didn't know that.
Fees. Yeah, you're going to get hit with fees. You're probably going to get stuck with the books and the kit. They can't do anything about that, but they can refund you per credit hour for the school you have not yet attended. So you're not stuck. And I've had people transfer in from other schools. So when they're past the 40% mark, Jane, what would you give them as advice to get through the course if they are just really disliking the program?
So it's going to be harsh, but I believe, and again, this is probably based on my experience, my age when I went to school, and also my level of like interest and passion that I had. But I believe a good 80% of this career is going to be what you put into it. Right. And so personally, I was already just like, I was ravenous for information. And this was, again, 10 years ago. Their Instagram, Facebook was a little bit different back then. There wasn't TikTok. There was none of that stuff. I was going to Barnes and Noble and making a stack of magazines this big and getting my Starbucks and my Rice Krispie treat and just reading every article that I could get my hands on skincare and devices and treatments. I just loved it. YouTube, I would go on YouTube and I would watch videos on lasers. And then when Laura and I would go out with our friends, I'd be like, Laura, what's your opinion on this and this? So the passion and interest was already there for me. My schooling was very minimal. My education was very minimal. I really was a get in and get that piece of paper and get out. And so if someone is not liking their school and they're not feeling like they're getting the education that they should be getting, well, my first thing would be go talk to your director, go talk to the instructors, go exhaust all the like options that you have within your school, and do it kindly and do it assertively and firmly. But if you hit a roadblock, then my recommendation would be you probably need to put your head down, get out of there, and invest all your extra time and energy into educating yourself. And that's really sad that someone would have to do that. But the thing is, it can be done, especially now with all of the resources that we have. I mean, you've got your textbook, you've got every social media platform, YouTube. I mean, we call it the YouTube University for a reason. And then if you're really compassionate, find mentors, find people like me and Laura. I cannot tell you, I'm sure it's the same for you, how many DMs I answer, just girls saying like, how long did you go to school for? What should I do? What do you recommend? Are you making any money? What product? I mean, half the time they think we're dermatologists and we can like diagnose like crazy. Oh my God, not a medical professional. But find those people that, speak to you and that know what they're talking about. There are so many resources, and as much as I think schools matter and the real good education matters, as long as you have that license, you're going to be able to go out there and do services. What you do with that is going to be up to you. And so I really think go talk to the school first. And if the school's not cooperating with you, then just get in and get out. And you're going to have to rely on yourself. Again, anyone going to school for this is an adult. And no one's going to do it for you when you get out of school. So it's not much is really going to change. This is one of those careers where it's not just plug and play. You don't just go get a degree. It's not, accounting, and then you go get a job in an accounting firm and you just plug in numbers all day. This, especially in the last 10, 15 years, this industry has exploded. You have to have a social media presence. You have to be constantly engaged in what's happening because it's moving at a crazy pace. And so a lot of it is going to be up to the student and how much they're putting into it.
Right. Yeah, and it does happen more often than not. Like I hear about it so often. So if you are that person and you're not enjoying your school, or you just finished a program and you really don't feel like you learned anything, it's on you. And honestly, we have a really good school and a really good program. I still get students that can pass the minimum requirements, do their hours, and can pass doing a basic facial, and I have to license them. It doesn't mean they're great. It means they put in minimal effort and they were able to pass. Their success is what happens after. And so whether you had a great education, whether you had a mediocre education, or you had a poor education, it's you, it's your personality and your drive. That's going to.
I have a really hard question for you now, because what's popping up in my head now is, okay, so let's say education was crap, mediocre, amazing, right? Because everybody's going to experience something different. What do you feel like if you had to write like an ad for the perfect esthetician or just a great esthetician? What do you think makes a good, well-rounded esthetician? Like what skills, what personality traits? Oh, by the way, I say this all the time because I get this from Laura: hire for personality, not for skill. Right. So that was one of my biggest takeaways from working for you. And I pass it on even to my husband, who now is a recruiter and it's kind of like HR and hires people. I'm always like, skill can be taught, dude. hire for personality, because if their personality sucks, they suck. So if you were going to sort of create like the greatest esthetician, what would that look like to you?
Oh, that's so hard.
I know it's so tricky, but I mean, in general, like I know we personally might love somebody, but like, is it going to be more about like, let's say customer service? Is it going to be more about having empathy and making someone feel comfortable? Or is it going to be more of a skill set? What, like, in your opinion, what do you think makes a really great esthetician?
All right. So backing up to some of my experience, I worked behind the chair. Obviously, I worked in education, obviously. But then I ended up working my way up to a spa director position, which is what I thought I always wanted. That was the goal. That was, when I set my goals, that was it. I'm going to be a spa director. And then beyond that, before I could even possibly see being a spa owner, it was always to be a director. And so when it came to hiring, this was like I was so excited to be able to like hire my own team. But then I realized very quickly how hard it is. And when you're getting like hundreds,
it's a nightmare.
right? I'm like, God, they're here for their interview. If they're like 20 minutes early, I'd be like, man, well, her time is more important than mine. Like you just get so bitter about doing this. But so here's my tips, and not really necessarily on skill set, on like getting the job, is so some things that I would look for is that the person could hold a conversation, right? Because like if you can't hold a conversation in an interview, good luck doing facials. Then the other part would be like, how did they get to me? And like, how much do they know about my business and what I'm hiring? If they did zero research, like if it's just Indeed auto sending resumes to people, if their resumes were not put together, if their resumes look like a kid did them or a computer just spit them out, I really hated those. If they didn't follow up with a resume with like a follow up, like, hey, I sent you a resume 2 days ago, just want to follow up. If you want to get in touch with me, this is how. That would be impressive to me. So like standing out from the crowd in the actual like resume and applying for the job was really important. If somebody emailed me directly instead of going through Indeed, instant interview. But in the interview process, obviously before I pull them in, they have to have qualifications that you're looking for. And I think the big one and what most employers struggle with is availability, because when you interview somebody, they'll tell you until they're blue in the face, like how excited they are to work with you. And, oh yeah,
I can't work Monday through Friday or the weekends, basically.
Yeah, and then you hire them, and they're like, oh, by the way, I can't work Saturday or Sunday, and then I can't work past 2:00.
Oh my God. I have trauma with hiring people.
Yeah. So availability is one. Personality is always number one. Availability, and then your skill set. They're going to have you do a facial, so don't be surprised. And I tell all my students that when you go for jobs, don't be shocked. They're going to say, I like your personality enough and your resume looks nice enough. Now let's put words in action here. You gotta walk the walk and talk the text. So they're going to give you a setup. So they don't expect you to know about their product line. That's not what they're doing. They want to see your touch. They want to see your flow. They want to see your massage. And so they really want to see that you know how to navigate a face and product. And that's really what they're looking for. I mean, unless you can think of anything else, Jane. I mean, I know we would just look for like, do they have a nice touch? Do they have a nice rhythm? You can tell instantly when someone is uncomfortable or doesn't know what they're doing by their pressure and by their hand motions. So if somebody can pass getting a resume directly to me, has great personality, has great even just skill set. I don't even care about work experience, skill set, but then can get in there and do an awesome facial, they're as good as hired.
Yeah, I agree. I think also like with some of the, I don't know, I see a lot of girls that are, students that are young, they've never even maybe had a job before. So they're very nervous. I mean, I see some of the students, like they're scared to even like go take the clients, when they're doing student clinic, they're scared to take the clients from the front desk to the room and to the table. And I'm so far removed from that I sometimes have to go back and be like, oh my gosh, remember how scared you were to just even touch someone's face? Because, with experience and maturity and getting older, you kind of disconnect from where you were.
You just don't care anymore. You're just like, get
I mean,
offended.
we've been through so many horror stories that now I'm like, you're scared to do that? Like I've come in with people half naked and had to like, are you kidding? But I try to go back to the place that I was at when I first went to school. And even though I was in my late 20s, I think the biggest advice that I would give is beyond schooling, beyond skill set is know what your strengths are and know what your weaknesses are and own both of them.
Yeah.
So like for me, I could talk all day long to anybody nowadays, but like we know that I'm not tech savvy. We know that I am like on a computer, I am like a 75-year-old lady. And so when it comes to the admin, back office, marketing, technology stuff, that's a weakness for me. So if I was going to go in and get hired at a job and they want me to do, maybe half admin, half, as Laura knows, because she has hired me as at a job. It was a huge learning curve for me because I was in the treatment room for so many years. The only time I ever was on a device was doing this. And so all those tech skills, admin skills, office skills, I was so rusty.
Yeah.
But I could talk to clients, I could sell products. So I think if you're a student and you're going into school or you're going and you're starting to apply for jobs and you're starting to interview, I think being very honest of like, oh, I rock at this, and this, but you know that you need to work on some other stuff, work on those things and get more comfortable in those things. Cause I think I see these students and they're like amazing at waxing and they're so confident. But then when they have to go do like a little mock, like selling of a product or something, they're freaking out. And so my thing is like, okay, own your waxing skills and of course highlight that when you go to start interviewing. But if you feel weak in one category, well then go work on that and own it and figure out a way to like patch that up so that it doesn't hinder you from getting a job.
Yeah, and I don't think and a strong employer will not veer away from someone who checks all the other boxes. But if I have an employee come in and say, listen, I can do this, I can do that, but I'm really shaky on this, I will learn it if you teach it to me. Like as long as you're willing to learn and you're not like, I don't do technology, I don't do like you own it and then you just say, I'm willing to work on it, I'm willing to be taught, I'm willing to learn whatever I can. I don't know a single employer that would be like, no, you don't know.
Because at the end of the day, it's like you said, you hire for personality, not always for skill set. Because I can teach a monkey how to dermaplane and how to apply a peel. But if they're grumpy and they're not a team player or they don't get along with others, that's much, much harder to fix.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. And I do talk to my students about, because like every class has its own personality. And so we run classes with 10 students and I can pick out maybe the 1 to 2 that are a little on the quieter side, maybe a little more reserved, not speaking up as much, not participating in class as much, a little more embarrassed to say stuff. And I do give them a big lecture about how like I literally have 2 personalities. I am by nature an introvert, which they all laugh at because I'm up doing to make us laugh and have a good time. But like I'll go home and I won't talk for hours. Like I'm perfectly fine just being in my little crabby shell. I'm a Cancer.
Shut down a little bit. Yeah. Have
crabby shell.
Quiet time.
Yeah. And but you literally have to have 2 personalities. You have to have obviously your personality and then your work personality, which is inquisitive and outgoing and empathetic and someone that I always tell them, imagine the esthetician that you see as being so successful. Like what is her personality? And then try to emanate that as best as you can.
I've seen that where someone said, imagine like your life or your career or whatever it is that you aspire to be, and then reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
So even though you may not be confident talking to clients and selling $1,000 in retail a month or whatever it may be, imagine what that person is like. And then basically act and pretend that you're emulating that person. And eventually you'll get so comfortable doing it and you reverse engineer it that you will become that person. And that is something that whole fake it till you make it, get in where you fit in, like all of those things that I have really found to be true. Like there have been times where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just smiled and was friendly and I got through it.
Yeah. Well, Amy Cuddy does a really good TED talk that I show all my classes when we get to like the business chapter, because you leave school and you're always, I don't know enough, I'm not ready, and you're doubting yourself. And she tells a story about fake it until you become it, not necessarily fake it till you make it, fake it till you become it. And so
I love that.
emotions, go through the motions, go through the motions, and then one day you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm here, I'm doing it. And I feel like most of my career I've done that, not realizing I was doing that. Because when I first taught, the very first school that I taught at, they did not have a facial program yet. I went in and I was like, hey, I want to open a facial program. I can either compete with you or you can hire me to do it. And they were like, first of all, who are you? And second of all, we were just gonna build a facial program. We're looking for someone to hire. And so it was perfect timing. And they gave me about 6 weeks. They did not oversee anything I was doing. And then they were like, oh, by the way, you have a full class of like 12 students. Good luck. And I was up there, my little knees were shaking. And I'm like, I've been acting like I was a theater major. I mean, I had done plays in front of 300 people, but I was shaking in my booties. And I found that TED talk and I was like, wow, you really do, you just fake it. And then one day you realize like, oh wow, I actually became that person. So that would definitely be advice.
I tell my students all the time, I'm like, everybody does their first like real facial on a client and is terrified. I don't know one esthetician that ever did her first facial out of school that wasn't like, I don't know what I'm doing. I remember painting on a mask and just being like, I can't believe someone's going to pay money for this. Like, and I tell my students, I'm like, listen, I remember I had one girl, she was almost in tears. She was so upset because she forgot to do a second pass of microderm on a lady's chin. And I was like, sweetie, that lady had no idea that you didn't. I'm like, she's laying down, she's relaxed. And as long as everything feels good, I said, as long as you're confident, she has no idea.
No clue.
And she was so upset. And I said, but you know what? You're so upset. You're not going to make that same mistake next time. I'm like, you will never forget to do this. And the client rebooked with her. And I was like, honey, this is a perfect like learning experience for you. I'm like, you're making it a bigger deal. Get out of your head about it.
Right.
And I think that's the thing is everyone thinks that they should come out of school and be like a rock star esthetician and feel 100% confident. I don't know anybody that's gotten out of school that has felt that way.
I don't know either. I really don't. And, if you were one of those people that really doesn't feel confident, whether you had a great education or not, there's so much continuing education out there. I mean, you have so much information at your fingertips that you can get a hold of that. Go after it. Go get more education. Go take classes. I like to spend my Sunday mornings. I do the Coffee with Esthetician on Instagram, but before I do that, I'll sit on YouTube and I'll just watch people. And there's some things I agree with, and there's some things I don't agree with. And as long as you're looking at it objectively,
right?
Then
I think so.
It's subjective and objective.
Always have to ask Nick which is which.
Yeah, so just look at it from the perspective of I'm just going to listen to what they have to say, and based on my training, I'll come up with my opinions of that. And I think that goes a long way because sometimes whether you realize it or not, you really did learn. Like some people are like, I'm not prepared, I don't know. And then I ask them like rapid fire 5 different questions and they can respond to me as a free thinking esthetician. And I'm like, you know the answers. Like just because you got a 75 on the test doesn't mean you don't know the answers. You just didn't know how to take the test. So you guys, you probably know a lot more than you think you know. You have resources out there. If you are an esthetician that is in a school that you don't care for, or if you graduated a program, you feel like you didn't learn enough, there's so much out there for you. And if you are shopping for a school, hopefully the advice that we gave you during the first half of the podcast is really valuable. End of story, you have to do your research, and the time you put into finding a school, hopefully you get out with a good education. And we're always available. I'll put a contact box where our podcast is. It's going to be linked on the website, and you can always drop us questions. And I think as the podcast progresses, we'll kind of have like a Q&A at the end. Maybe we can answer those questions for them.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So we're here. And we'll be, doing a podcast about once a month for you guys. If you have any suggestions or things that you really want to hear from both our perspectives, please drop us a line and let us know. I think on a positive note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. But on a funny positive note, Jane, you want to give me one instance in your career that you really had second thoughts of what you're doing with your life?
Oh my God.
We all have them.
Oh, this is not really like a good story or anything. I mean, I've got a few really good like terrors of the esthetician room stories. But I remember questioning what the heck I'm doing, where the med spa that I worked at for, years and years, they used to have this, and you may remember this machine. I don't know, Laura, how popular it was, but the Smooth Shapes machine. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was like a cellulite machine.
Mm-hmm.
It essentially was like, it looked like a big pool vacuum with like rollers on it. And the owner's wife used to do it. And then she pawned it off on me because it was miserable to do. And it essentially was like a pool vacuum that you rolled over people's butts and thighs.
Yeah.
But it took like an hour to do. And so I'd have these poor women on my table, half naked, taking this giant contraption that like sucked up their cellulite, rolled it out. And by the end, I would just be dripping sweat, sore. And I remember just being like, in my head, like, I didn't go to school for this. Like, this sucks. And granted, I made really good money doing it because it was a high price point treatment. But it was definitely one of those things like, I don't want to do this. I have to put my foot down at some point and be like, yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So it was definitely one of those, like, I learned what I don't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's great. And you're going to have them out in the industry. You're going to have them.
Oh yeah.
Was, I have 3 distinct memories. And I share them with my class as the class progresses. I'll be like, here's another one. I do have one where I was doing a body scrub because at the resort that I worked at, estheticians did the body scrubs. And it was a little old lady, and she was really she wasn't like the sweet old grandma lady. She was like the crusty troll that came out from under the cliff lady.
Gargoyle.
Gargoyle, and like she harassed the front desk, and then everyone's like, give them to Laura because she's the nice one, and Laura will take care of her. And I was like, great. And so she couldn't get up on the table. I had the table like as low as it goes. And she was like cockeyed, like crooked on the table to begin with. And I'm like, this lady's gonna fall off and crack her head on the tile. And I'm like trying to do her body scrub. And she was like, I got all these rolls in the back and I can't wash them. Can you scrub in there? And so little me, I'm like, sure. And I'm rubbing, and in all of her rolls, there was like this cottage cheesy stuff. And I didn't realize I was looking at Candida albicans at the time. Of course, now, fast forward, I realized she had a yeast infection in her skin folds. Didn't know.
Oh, no.
On it. Scrubbing it, I'm like, this can't be right, and so I'm like removing it and scrubbing it. It smells, and I'm like, oh. And then I get to her feet, and she had the hammer toes, the ones that are like totally like this. And she goes, honey, my feet hurt so bad, can you stretch out my hammer toes? And I was like, oh, okay.
This is definitely a question your career moment.
I was, yeah. And I'm like scrubbing her toes, and then I had to like stretch her toes out. And as I did, they would like crack and pop. And I was just like, in my head, I'm like, what else can I do with my life? Like
McDonald's. We're
wow. 4 years in. Can I change my mind at this point without anybody in my family telling me I told you so? Like it was just, and then I got through it, and she was very appreciative at the end of it. But that was definitely one of those I'm questioning my life's choices moments.
We definitely need to do an episode where we talk about like horror stories of the treatment room, because I've got some good ones.
Stay tuned for those.
Right.
Well, thank you guys all for tuning in for our podcast. Like I said, about once a month, we'll put out something new for you. If you have any requests or anything that you want to hear about, please let us know. And, send your questions in, send your comments. If you're a licensed esthetician and you'd like to guest speak on the podcast, we will be having guest speakers. We would love to hear from you. So thank you so much. And I guess we'll see y'all next time.
All right. Bye, guys. Bye, Laura.
All right, let me stop there.